Hello and welcome, bonjour et bienvenue. Welcome, thank you for joining us for Regenerate Canada, a year of impact. My name is Megan Leslie and I am the President and CEO of WWF-Canada. And I'm pleased to join you live. This broadcast, we are in our Toronto office, so welcome to our office. Our Toronto office is located on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, Chippewa, Haudenosaunees, and this is also home to many diverse Indigenous populations today. And the water and land that we're going to be talking about today, it was and remains Indigenous territory. So it's super important for us to keep that in mind today, but also every day when we are doing our work to protect and restore those lands and waters. And I'm pretty eager to share with you today some of how we're putting that into practice. All right. I know we have supporters joining us from across the country. Des gens se joignent à nous partout au pays. So please say hello or bonjour in the chat and let us know where you're coming in from. It's an absolute pleasure to have you all here from across the country to celebrate a year of conservation wins. And we look forward to what's next for us here at WWF Canada. Let me just check. I know we've got some people joining from Montreal, and I know there's some folks from Vancouver and Ottawa. So we do have people joining us from across the country. Et merci d'être avec nous pour célébrer une autre année de succès de conservation et voir ce que nous avons prévu pour cette année. I want you to know that each year, your enthusiasm to do more for the planet, it really pushes us to grow our ambition and progress. Your support has a direct benefit for nature and wildlife. Now, what do wildlife need? They need habitat. They need places to forage and to hunt, to hibernate and breed and raise their young. Thanks to you, we are supporting efforts that protect and restore that habitat, ensuring that it benefits wildlife, but also climate at the same time, because we know that nature also sequesters carbon. So thanks to you, we are helping species like the monarch butterfly, who flutters by en route to its winter refuge, the walrus, who gathers in these sites called haulouts along our northern coasts, and the widely traveled caribou, who graze on lichen and the purple mountain saxifrage that blooms in alpine habitats when the spring comes. And that is what we are doing together. All right, what's on the agenda for today? Well, first, I'm going to share some stories of how together we made some incredible things happen for nature this year. After that, I want to take a moment to share some of your stories, including a story of someone really special who had a major impact on the work we did this past year. Then we're going to talk about some exciting projects we've got lined up for 2025. And to finish, we're going to open it up to a Q&A. So feel free to add your questions in the chat in French or in English as we go along. Either I'll be able to answer your questions, or we actually have some great WWF Canada experts online who might be able to answer them for you. L'événement sera en anglais, mais n'hésitez pas à poser des questions en français dans la boîte de texte. Notre équipe sera ravie de vous répondre en français. All right, let's dive in. Okay, this event isn't just an opportunity to reflect on what we've accomplished, and we're also going to look ahead at some of the exciting work we have planned for this year. It is also a chance to celebrate you, because we can't do this work without our donors and supporters. You make this work possible. If you have joined us today, then you probably know, it's a pretty good chance that you know that biodiversity loss and climate change impacts are here. They're happening now. They are affecting wildlife and people every day. And you know that we need to tackle these challenges head on. How we do that? We do it with strategic and targeted conservation work. And at WWF Canada, what we do is we draw on science and Indigenous knowledge and community, and that's you. Sometimes, I know, these challenges, they can feel overwhelming, but there are solutions. And if we have all of these things in place, then we know that these challenges are not insurmountable. So looking back on everything we were able to do together in 2024, I can say not just with hope, but with confidence that we are moving the needle. We are making progress, and we're seeing positive change on so many levels, from sowing native plant seeds in the millions, to measuring carbon stored in soils and trees all across the country, to raising the alarm on the urgent threat of underwater noise to marine life. Now, our efforts, they are coast to coast to coast. They span from the oceans and the forests to the wetlands and the rivers and even the air we breathe. It's all part of our 10-year plan called Regenerate Canada. I think we're going to pop in the chat a link to that plan. We have 3 big, audacious goals, and it's what wildlife needs. So we're going to restore 1 million hectares of habitat for wildlife. We're going to steward and protect 100 million hectares of habitat. And at the same time, we're going to work to reduce carbon emissions by 30 megatons, using what we know is an incredibly effective tool, nature, that habitat. So we are now 4 years into that plan, and we are in a great position to take a breath, take stock, and get an even better idea of how it's going and how you have helped us get there. All right, like I mentioned earlier, wildlife, they need habitat. And stewarding habitat for wildlife is about making sure that their home can support their needs, their need to hunt, their need to raise their young. For marine mammals, that habitat is the ocean, and shipping has the potential to degrade that habitat. How? Well, by polluting the waters or by producing noise that makes it really difficult for them to communicate or hunt or even rest. And over the years, we've supported research to show the impact of shipping on those ocean habitats. And we've worked hard to find solutions for wildlife, but also for industry. We want to reduce the noise in the water. Sometimes that means making a little bit of noise on land to make sure that the policymakers are listening and doing the right thing. Sam Davin is going to join us. He is WWF-Canada's Senior Specialist for Marine Conservation and Shipping. And so our staff work across Canada. Sam is joining us from Ottawa, and he's going to talk a little bit about how your advocacy for marine mammals made waves this year. Hey, Sam, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about how, how our supporters showed up for marine wildlife this year?
Thanks, Megan. Our supporters started off 2024 loud and clear, with more than 11,000 of you calling on the Canadian government to release a draft of their underwater noise strategy to help protect marine species like bowhead and beluga whales from harmful industrial noise pollution. You were clear, and you showed what collective action can do. And the government? They heard you. They released the draft strategy in August and gave the public a chance to weigh in.
Our supporters, yay! Thank you for doing that work. So Sam, where are we at with this now?
Yeah, Megan, there's still a lot of work to do. As one of my colleagues said, the draft strategy reads a lot like a plan for a plan. But even that is a big step forward for wildlife, and so we're very thankful for your help.
Okay, great. Sam, so what else have you and your colleagues been up to this year?
Well, we were also able to produce and publish some really critical research. We mapped ship speeds and pollution in the Great Bear Sea to see exactly where marine species are most vulnerable to deadly ship strikes and pollution. And on the global scene, we are part of some big progress, like at the United Nations International Maritime Organization, which announced a much-needed emissions control area for the Arctic that will crack down on ship pollution for the benefit of Arctic communities and wildlife.
Amazing. Thanks to you and the shipping team for that incredible work, and thanks for joining us. In addition to working on how shipping affects wildlife, we studied how conservation can form the basis of sustainable economies in the Arctic. And we've been funding research about ways to combine Indigenous knowledge with Western scientific approaches to help protect species like caribou or ice whales, and also to reduce conflict between humans and polar bears. Okay, so little journey to the north, let's head south. One of the ways to restore or create habitats is by planting plants and trees that are crucial for fighting climate change and enhancing biodiversity. So planting for habitat benefits species like the Canadian lynx. If they're going to hunt successfully, if they're going to have places to den, what they need are dense forest cover. So we're making sure that they have that. Planting can even benefit a species like salmon. So if you plant on the shorelines, if you're planting along the riverbeds, salmon actually need healthy vegetation in rivers and streams for spawning areas and also to filter out pollutants in the water. Now, we are lucky to have we're going to be joined by James Snyder, who's WWF-Canada's VP of Science, Knowledge and Innovation, and he's going to tell us a little bit about this work. Welcome, James, and thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit more about this planting work.
Thanks, Megan. Happy to be here and to speak with our supporters today. Our supporters' commitment is so essential to the restoration efforts that we've been supporting across the country. Thanks to your support, we saw the planting of more than 1 million trees and plants and shrubs across a number of projects, with millions more planned in 2025 and beyond. An impressive 500,000 of those trees and shrubs and counting were planted by the Shekwemekulu Restoration and Stewardship Society based near Kamloops, BC. We've been working with SRSS, this organization, for a few years now to support the restoration of large areas of forest that were destroyed by wildfire, such as the 2017 Elephant Hill wildfire and subsequent fires in the region. And this work is so important because it's not just about replanting trees and the vegetation, but also about how planting the right species in the right places goes a long way to building the resilience of that forest to future climate change-induced forest fires. So that, really critical work there. In addition to the large-scale reforestation efforts that you've supported, we've also seen more than 41 million seeds planted by recipients of our Nature and Climate Grant Program, helping recreate habitats that support species like the bobolink and a group of orange butterflies that are called skippers.
Ah, the skippers. Amazing. James, thanks. This is incredibly inspiring work. Don't go too far because I'm going to come back to you in a minute. But thanks for bringing us that update. In addition to these impressive achievements in restoration and reforestation, your support has shone through in other ways, like fundraising. So many of you showed up for us online. You showed up for us through your advocacy in your own communities, and thousands of you showed up for us in person for our Climb for Nature, the biggest one ever that we've held. Biggest in part because we expanded to Vancouver for the very first time. So joining us from Vancouver, we have our VP of of Community and Legacy Giving, Scott Sandison. Tell us about the climb that's coming up this year.
Thanks, Megan. And first, I got to say, you are right that last year was our biggest climb event ever. We actually kept count. And together, our supporters like you took more than 11 million steps up the CN Tower, up and down the stadium steps at BC Place and across the country. Some of you even made your own climbs as part of that Anywhere climb, raising an incredible $1.5 million for nature and wildlife and having so much fun while doing it. So wow, incredible. Thank you so much for that. And this year, I'm excited to say registration is now open for all three of our climbs, Toronto, Vancouver, and the Anywhere climb. And we have a record year to beat. So we hope that you'll join us to climb even higher together. You can join us in Toronto on April 5th or 6th, in Vancouver on May 10th, or take your own personal challenge anytime between April and June with the Anywhere climb. We look forward to seeing you.
Scott, you just said May 10th. That means it's happening. It's confirmed. That's the first time we said it publicly.
It's real, Megan. It's happening.
It's happening. I'm going to be there. And I hope lots of you will be there too. If you are thinking about doing a climb, whether it's in Vancouver or Toronto or what Scott talked about, the Anywhere climb, let us know. Pop it in the chat because, I think there are some climb curious people who might be online today and we'd like to inspire them to join us. Now, from literally stepping up for wildlife, 1,776 steps at the CN Tower for our climbs, I want to tell you about tens of thousands in our conservation community that stepped up in a different way. They took us up on our offer of training and resources, which led you to taking more than 1 million actions for conservation this year. So what did that look like? Well, some of you took part in training on carbon measurement. Some of you submitted data for our research. Some of you signed petitions demanding change. And many of you took part in our community planting program, Regrow. And through Regrow, you planted native species to support pollinators like bees and birds and butterflies. And some of you did things like you tried to leave the leaves this fall to support nutrient-rich soil. If you planted a native species in your garden or on your balcony, let us know in the chat, because I think we should be inspiring some gardening to take root in the minds of some of our other supporters. All right, a few other highlights that I want to share. Last year, we were able to take part in some international conversations about biodiversity and share a little more of what we do with networks all over the world. At the UN Biodiversity Summit in Colombia, it was called COP16, we launched Mission Restoration. And this is an initiative to help Canada restore 30% of the country's degraded ecosystems by 2030. This is a commitment that our country made when they signed on to the Global Biodiversity Framework. And if you've been following along with our work, you know that one of our core goals is to prioritize Indigenous-led conservation. And I am proud to share that we had the inaugural season for our Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas Support Fund. Now, this is a fund for Indigenous nations and communities that are looking into whether or not an Indigenous protected and conserved area would be a good fit for them, if it could be a priority, and what that could look like. We also offered nationwide training and a free online resource library for how to actually measure carbon in our landscapes and seascapes, so that First Nations can make their own decisions with their own data about how to manage those lands in ways that keep carbon out of the atmosphere. And you know our work with Katzie First Nation. Well, we continued that work to open up salmon spawning channels in BC's Lower Fraser watershed. If you are inspired and curious and want to learn a little bit more about what we've accomplished this year, we invite you to read our latest annual report. We're going to pop that into the chat right now. Hey, if these projects are familiar to you, yes, that's great. Love to hear it. And if they're new to you, then I am really proud to be the one to share some of these successes with you and what we've accomplished together. Of course, you know, what we're talking about here today is just a small part of everything we're able to do thanks to your support. If there is a WWF-Canada project or initiative that speaks to you, that you're proud of supporting, I'd love to hear about it. Pop it in the chat. We want to know what spurs your generosity, what piques your curiosity, and what stories stay with you as a supporter of our work. Speaking of stories, we are so lucky to have some stories to share with you right now. We asked donors to share what inspires them to give to WWF Canada, and here are some of the responses we heard. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Gregg in Timberlea, Nova Scotia, and I give to the World Wildlife Association in Canada because I want them to help clean up the mess that we have made over these decades. I want to save the fuzzies, I want to save the slimies, and I want to save all the leafies. Plants are my favorite, and without them, we wouldn't be here.
Why do I help the World Wildlife Foundation? Well, my name's Jason George, and I'm a wildlife photographer, and I think it's a great way to be able to give back to the animals that I love to try to find in the wild. For example, I've gone to India to try to find a snow leopard, and I've seen 6 of them. But I've also had the opportunity to have some children have one adopted to them. So far I've adopted, I think it's about 60 plus animals for different kids around the world.
I have all the feels. Thanks to our supporters who sent in videos and who shared why they support our work. I mean, how incredible to hear from you directly. And we are working hard to make you proud. And you should be proud of what we're doing together. All right. When I hear these stories, you know, for me, it's really a reminder of what our core values are and what your core values are. This is exactly what we bring to our work at WWF-Canada, values that inspire us to care for nature, the way that nature has cared for us now and into the future. That brings us to a really special part of our event. We want to celebrate one supporter in particular whose efforts really reflect everything that we believe in as lovers of nature and wildlife, and of the importance of engaging our local communities to act for change. The Graham Loader Community Panda Award was created in 2014, and this award acknowledges and shows our appreciation for supporters who've gone above and beyond for WWF Canada by engaging their friends and families and communities. These supporters have raised funds and contributed to building a better future for the people on this planet and the wildlife on this planet. So this award honors Graham Loader, an outstanding young man who tragically lost his life in his quest to bike across Canada while supporting WWF. Through this award, we not only honor Graham's memory and his significant contribution to the planet, but we also acknowledge others with a selfless and giving spirit like Graham's. This year, WWF Canada and the Loader family are thrilled to present the Graham Loader Community Panda Award to another young man who has stepped up again and again for nature. Let's hear from Graham's father, Paul, who joins us virtually to present the award.
Good day, everybody. My name is Paul Loader, Graham Loader's father. First of all, I'd like to thank WWF for continuing to make this award and keep Graham's legacy alive. This year's recipient, despite only being 12 years old, has had 8 events for WWF, the latest being an impressive 42-kilometer 2-day hike to celebrate his 12th birthday, where he raised over $2,000. This year's recipient of the Graham Loader Award is Hudson Corville Clark. His dedication to the cause of nature and wildlife runs deep, and for that we truly thank you and for all your efforts. Thank you, Hudson.
When I was in kindergarten, I learned about endangered species and it made me really upset. So my mom suggested collecting money for the WWF instead of gifts, and I just kept going and growing my efforts over the 8 years. And I hope other kids that hear my story will be inspired and learn that if we all work together, we can really make a difference for our planet. Thank you.
I'm not sure what's more impressive, walking all that distance, raising money for such a great cause, or doing it all on your birthday. Congratulations, Hudson, and thank you so much for your incredible fundraising work. And thank you to Paul and the entire Loader family for doing so much to strengthen the spirit of giving that makes WWF Canada what it is. All right. I hope that everybody who's watching out there feels proud of what you've helped us achieve together in 2024, and that you're inspired by the different ways that your care makes a difference. Now, looking at what we accomplished this past year, it's great, but it's a new year. The action isn't slowing down even for a second, and we have lots on the go this year. So I'd like to bring back James Snyder, our VP of Science, Knowledge, and Innovation, to share a little bit about what we have planned for the future. Happy New Year, James. I know our team's already hard at work. They have been for months. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what they're up to?
Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about in the year ahead. One in particular that sticks in my mind was a new collaboration with WWF Madagascar. And so we're working across the WWF network to support, in this case, what is a community-led coastal conservation and marine protected area work off the coast of Madagascar. A really exciting project that will support not only an area of unique biodiversity globally, but also in terms of supporting community-based work on the ground, an area that's highly vulnerable also to climate change. Back here at home, I'm also really excited to share with our supporters about the new issue of our Living Planet Report Canada, which is a milestone report that looks at the status and trends of wildlife populations, and this time with a specific focus on Canadian species. And that should also bring some insights in terms of the conservation strategies and approaches that really can support our impact as an organization and the work that our supporters, of course, are making possible right across the country. And then finally, one thing I wanted to flag is from our wildlife and industry team and some research that they're doing to support on ship speeds and pollution in Canadian waters. And the other piece, of course, sticking with my mind, is on primary forests. So we're looking at mapping what are those forests in Canada that have not actually been impacted by a human footprint, and understanding where they are and what that might mean in terms of forest management and protection of those important places in Canada. There's a lot more, much more. And as the supporters and followers, you'll be the first to know about the work as it comes online.
Thanks, James. There is a lot more. And I might actually share with you some of the ways that we're looking at communicating our work, because it's really important that you know about it and that we can inspire other people with our work. So we're going to continue to innovate and tell our stories of conservation in exciting ways, including a brand new podcast. We have a first episode coming out soon, so keep your eye out for that. And we're also looking at doing a video series inspired by our monthly newsletter, which is called Field Notes. And both keep our community up to date with the most interesting and relevant conservation news. If you are not subscribed to Field Notes, you got to get on it. You should sign up. It's a great newsletter. We're going to put a link in the chat box to do just that. Et aussi, cette infolettre est aussi disponible en français. And of course, we're going to continue the work that we've already done, that we're working on. We're going to see it through. So that means planting more native plants and trees, restoring more nature to make it more resilient, offering more training and tools for monitoring the health of ecosystems and wildlife, giving out more funding to Indigenous-led protection initiatives, making more connections with other organizations, with schools, teachers, businesses, governments, researchers to keep that momentum going. And similarly, I see here in the chat, we also need more Hudson. Hudson, you really inspired our supporters. We need more Hudson. I know it seems like a lot that we're doing. I keep saying more, but you make it all the more possible. So we're on it. Now, let's move to our question and answer. I thank you for everything that you're doing, that you did in 2024 and in the future. I know you've got questions. Before we head into it, actually, I want to make sure that no one is left without a small token of our appreciation. So in a second, you're going to see a link in the chat to a virtual goodie bag. I love this idea. So we got a couple things in there to brighten your day, maybe brighten your desktop screen or brighten your Zoom background for your next Zoom call. There's also a special discount code in there. So you're all set for your next trip to our online store, whether it's to buy an adoption for a loved one or some cool WWF-Canada apparel, or maybe some beautiful nature-inspired greeting cards. You're all set with that discount code. Okay. We're going to take questions, throw them in the chat in English or French. We'll try to answer as many as possible in the remaining minutes that we have. And I actually think the first question, we asked folks if they wanted to send in questions by video, and I think our first one is a video question. Let's take a listen.
I've heard about threats to whale populations on the coast, particularly out here in BC. I've heard about mother whales grieving their calves and ferries striking whales, and I just wanted to know why this is happening and what WWF has coming up to address these issues.
Great question. And I think, Sam, you're still on the call. Are you able to give us an answer for that?
Thanks, Megan. It's a great question. Whales in BC and across Canada are facing serious threats, and WWF Canada is working to change that. We don't know exactly what caused this calf's death, but we do know that the key threats to whale populations include things like increased vessel traffic, underwater noise pollution, and ship strikes. And here are just a few of the things we're doing to help with this. First, we're tackling underwater noise. Noise pollution disrupts whale communication and increases stress. We're pushing for stricter regulations to reduce noise and establish quiet zones in critical habitat. Second, we're working on ship strikes. Our research shows that many ships are traveling way too fast in whale habitat. We're advocating for speed limits in these areas to reduce the risk of fatal collisions. Third, we're supporting marine protected areas, or MPAs. MPAs are safe havens for whales and other marine life. We're pushing for strong protections in these areas to safeguard critical habitat and promote species recovery. And finally, it comes back to you, we're raising awareness. We're working to educate the public on threats whales face and encourage community action. Together, we're in a position to push for stronger protections and make Canada's waters safer for whales.
Thanks, Kaylin, for sending in that question. I'm looking at the chat here and I see Lane. Oh, well, first, Diego has signed up for his first climb. We need more Diego. Lane has a question about donating monthly. And actually, I'd love if one of our team members could answer that in the chat, because then we can put in some links. That would be great. And then Meredith, hi, we're seeing so many wildfires each summer across Canada. Does WWF-Canada have conservation work planned to help address the urgency of this type of climate change fueled event? James Snyder, this has a lot to do with what you were talking about, some of the work we're doing in BC, for example. Maybe you can take this question.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, Meredith. And this is absolutely something that our team is putting a lot of thought against. Certainly, we've seen the wildfires across the country, whether it was in BC or the Northwest Territories, and we know that through a warming climate that there's a greater frequency and severity of wildfire. And so we're absolutely asking the question in terms of how can our conservation efforts support increasing the resilience of those forests to fire, to reduce that fire risk, to reduce the vulnerability of our natural ecosystems and the habitats that species rely upon to wildfire. One great example of that, of course, is the work that the Shepwemakula Restoration and Stewardship Society is supporting in terms of really planting the right diversity of species in their efforts to reforest that wildfire impacted area. Bringing back deciduous species is so important in terms of natural fire breaks. And other forest management practices that can really reduce the risk of widespread forest fire. Also, bringing back Indigenous fire management practices is so crucial, and we're looking at ways to support gatherings of Indigenous peoples, both in Canada and abroad, in terms of the role of fire management. But one of the big pieces that we're very mindful of is, of course, recognizing that many of these wildfires are, in fact, becoming more frequent because of a warming climate. So how can we protect those natural carbon stores? How can we actually avoid the conversion of those natural ecosystems? Stopping the degradation and destruction of nature really will go a long way in terms of reducing the greenhouse gases that are actually causing climate change. And so working at the root cause of the issue is top of mind for our team.
Awesome. Thanks, James. And thanks, Meredith, for that question. I see some other quick ones, and I'd love if some of our team could jump in. Cynthia wants to volunteer at the climb. Darlene has a good question about working with Canadian Navy. Maybe Sam, you can jump in on that. And I think I saw someone who wants to help spread our message over social media. Rochelle, love it. Have we got a job for you? But I also can see the clock on my computer, and I know that we've actually gone overtime, but we have so much to talk about. So I've got to wrap the Q&A up, but if you have more questions, pop them in the chat. Our team's going to stay online, and we are going to do our best to answer your... Oh, Juanita, Inquiring Minds Montessori students are asking. Thank you for being on here, and thanks for joining. We'll put an answer in the chat. Okay, with that, our time has come to an end. This has been fun. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being a part of what we're doing here. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being amazing supporters. I think we have the best supporters in the whole country. Happy New Year to you. We'll be in touch throughout the year about what we're working on. We're going to keep you updated. There's so much happening at WWF Canada, and it's going to be a great year. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.